My guest today is Aaron Weis, the Department of the Navy's Chief Information Officer. Aaron, thanks so much for taking the time and joining us on our DoD Cloud Exchange.
Thanks, and it's great to be here, Jason.
The whole 3-day event that we're having is really focused on not just cloud, even though that's cloud is in the name, of course, but really about digital transformation. How are you changing the way you're looking at providing services, providing capabilities to the warfighter? So I'm going to start maybe at the beginning with cloud, but we will have a broader conversation. And back in December 2020, the Navy shifted its approach to buying and using cloud services. So here we are about 15, 16 months after that. How briefly, let's just discuss that memo that you signed out, and then what really has changed over the past year for you?
Yeah, I think the thing that's important to keep in perspective is that cloud at the Department of Navy is part of a broader conversation that we started really in the middle of 2019. When I came into the Navy, into Department of Navy, and we looked at what are the issues that we're solving for? What are we trying to do here? There was a focused effort to come up with a vision. That vision was in response to some, frankly, really bad press and a study that had been commissioned called the Cyber Readiness Review. You're probably familiar with it. Seems like everyone and their brother has read it, even though it was never officially released. The Cyber Readiness Review, really highlighted the deficiencies at the Department of Navy from a technology perspective. And so one of the recommendations of the Cyber Readiness Review was that, hey, what we really need to do is stand up technology leadership and create a vision so we know what we're trying to do. And so that brought me in, and early on, we set about to create what became the Information Superiority Vision. And that vision very much in response to the Cyber Readiness Review. One of the first observations and key findings of that was that the Department of Navy was woefully behind from a technology perspective versus kind of peer organizations in industry. And I say that coming in as a CIO from industry. I was a Fortune 500 CIO a couple times over. And frankly, it was flabbergasting to me, the kind of level of technology capability that we offered our sailors, Marines, and civilians when I compared it to what I had in the chemical industry or even the automotive industry in industry. And so one of the first elements of the Information Superiority Vision is modernize, right? We must modernize the Department of Navy's information technology capability so that it can attain at least the equivalent of what we see in industry. And so that modernization thrust has multiple aspects. Cloud is clearly a way to get to modernization, and it's a key capability that we needed to be able to harness to be able to undertake modernization. Now, there's actually prerequisites to us getting to cloud. And for a lot of people, they would say, well, cloud is a duh moment, right? You have to have cloud, and you must be able to wrap your arms around this and use its full capability. Reality is the network infrastructure, the transport capability wasn't even ready to get to cloud. At the time, the DoD CIO asked me, why aren't you just going right all in on cloud? Why all this modernization and network stuff? I said, well, because we can't even get to cloud. So cloud for us is one of the ways that we'll create modernization and we'll create capability. But it is a part of this broader context of modernize, which is a part of the Information Superiority Vision. It is also then a part of the other two key lines of effort in the Information Superiority Vision. The first LOE I said is modernize. The second LOE we call innovate. And its basic premise is if we can at least get to benchmark capability, then we need to be able to drive innovation at scale so that we can create competitive advantage for the warfighter. This is then about how do you harness technology to create advantage. And in that case, again, cloud is an integral part of that. So it's an integral part of the modernize theme. Once we get to modernize, then how do we harness the power of cloud to help us drive innovation at scale? And there you can get into all those topics like DevSecOps and agile development and cloud security and all of that, which is critical. And then lastly, the third key LOE of the information superiority vision is defend. And we didn't call it cyber. I think cyber is an overused word. We called it defend because, as the cyber readiness review found, we've done a really poor job of defending our information over the last 15 years or so. And so cloud is an integral part of that effort to defend our information. As we can transition to cloud-based solutions, cloud-delivered applications, cloud-delivered infrastructures, then we're going to leverage that capability to improve our ability to defend our information through heightened cybersecurity, augmented by a different footing in cloud. And so cloud is part of this context. It's a how, it's a means to an end for a number of these LOEs. So the initial cloud memo that you reference, coming all the way back to that, was the first step to say we are going to drive enterprise cloud. It is a foundational capability that we need to be able to drive, right, so that we can do these things. And before that memo was released, cloud was a very fragmented activity, right? It was sort of done on a per application or per program level. Interestingly, when you looked at Department of Navy metrics on just cloud acquisition, we had more acquisition agreements than any of the other military departments, Department of Air Force, Department of Army, and yet a smaller aggregate spend on cloud overall. So what that says is you're not very focused on it in a cohesive way, and you're driving it at a very fragmented level so that sort of every program or every application is going to go out and buy, sort of cloud as a commodity, but you're not using it strategically. And so that memo that came out was the first sort of shot across the bow that says, this is a critical capability. We must use it strategically, and it's an integral part of this new thing, this information superiority vision, which sort of charts a path long term.
That background is actually really helpful because I think it really sets the tone for our conversation, because we are talking about really digital transformation with the cloud, knowing that it's a big piece of it, but it's just a single piece. And you brought up Agile and DevSecOps. We know the recent memo, software modernization memo that DoD put out. I'm sure that'll affect the Navy as well. One of the things that stands out to me that you said is that the Department of Navy was behind its peer organizations from a technology perspective. And you've told me about this, how you feel like you're just to the point now where you've played some catch up. Maybe you started in 2008 or 2009 when you got there. And now maybe you're in 2017, maybe you're a little further along. How far along are you? Are you more ready for cloud today than you were back in 2019 when you got to the Department of Navy?
Yeah, I think short answer is yes, and we are making great strides. We actually, it's funny that you use the year analogy because we kind of do that sometimes. We recently we are in the midst of deploying flank speed, which is Office 365 and Azure cloud capability across the Navy. The Marine Corps has already done their chunk. They're there. The Navy is about halfway through it. And, recently I got my first sort of mobile device, iPhone, with Office 365 on it, right? I had Microsoft Outlook and and Teams and whatnot on a device, and it was tied in with a OneDrive and cloud-based storage. And I looked up at one of the folks in my office and said, hey, we're at 2017. This is cool, right? So we do kind of chart that place. So I think in the Azure Office 365 world, we're 2017, 2018, moving rapidly to the right. There are other areas where we are not as far along. And we're working hard to do that. I think that the challenge in that broader modernization theme is it's how do you stitch these things together so that you are mindful of the critical path, right? Great example of this would be, we are in the process, as I said, of deploying Office 365 for Nipper nets. That's just unclassified. And we're at like 240,000 out of 470,000. We've crossed the halfway point. What we're gated by is back to that network and transport. We could deploy Office 365 much more rapidly, but the experience would be awful, especially when you get to the OCONUS locations, PACOM, Hawaii, Guam. Their core infrastructure isn't ready to sustain that. So, in many cases, it's how do you stitch these things together, understanding the critical path and knowing that, you're going to get there without kind of killing the workforce along the way. And we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. So it's a balance. Like I said, I think on the network end of enabling cloud, because this is about, can we reliably get to cloud? We're not at 2017. We're like 2006, and I know people will cringe when I say that. 2006, 2007. We're moving rapidly, but our architectures are rooted in an architecture that that's from 20 years ago. I mean, we live in this construct of the Microsoft domain controller. And when you hear people talk about, quote, the network, that's what they're referring to. They're referring to a construct that even Microsoft has moved away from. And we've institutionalized this way of creating transport from the 90s. And we've got to break out of that. And we're making strides. And so that's why I say the network is behind. We're way further ahead in terms of collaboration for those areas that can support it. I think then in other areas, we're at different places. And so we're trying to manage, the progression of all these things in a way that allows us to be successful, mindful of the lowest common denominator, and always sort of being responsive to the expectations. Of course, there's a lot of impatience, right? People want us to move faster, and you hear it all the time. You hear it on social media, get after this stuff. I got it. But there's so many moving pieces here. It's how do you bring it along in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, that reminded me of the story that I had written back, I guess, at Navy IT Day when you spoke and kind of give an update of where you're at, maybe October timeframe. And someone had commented at the bottom of the story that said, basically, I love these happy stories, except for when reality is not great at all, right? Somebody was not having a good experience with the changes. And that's, as you well know, you've done this many times, that happens. It's not going to be perfect for everyone. There are going to be some fits and starts and some hiccups. But I find it, there is an impatience that happens. And I think you probably see that when it comes to the network. Why can't we get there faster? What has to happen for us to get email to our phone? Something very simple. But so it sounds like there is progress being made without a doubt.
Absolutely. And look, I'm the most impatient guy there is. I'm often asked, hey, what's your greatest strength and your greatest weakness? It's the same thing, impatience, right? I am professionally impatient with our ability to get to where we want to go. I mean, a great example right now is we are on the cusp of being able to deploy broadly Azure Virtual Desktop. So a Win 10 desktop delivered from the Azure cloud, completely sticked with a Department of Navy image running directly from the cloud with multi-factor authentication, CAC-less authentication, zero trust in the infrastructure. And we've got the approvals from DoD to do this. So here I am. I'm the most impatient person in the world. I'm at PEO Digital's door saying, hey guys, when do we deploy this? We've got 470,000 endpoints. We ought to be able to put this on a couple 100,000 endpoints and solve multiple problems, security problems, access problems, management, sustainment. Let's not buy a couple 100,000 PCs. And I've got people on our own team for a lot of good reasons who will go, whoa, 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 whoa. we need to be pragmatic and take the right approach to this. So I try to balance the impatience here.
So you got my reporter antennas up. I heard something new. So can you talk a little bit more about this Win 10 desktop MFA cackless? What?
Yeah.
What? A cackless system?
Yes.
Zero trust infrastructure. You buzzword me up there. Now I'm excited. So what else can you tell me about what the timing, thought process behind it? What's it going to look like for Aaron Weis when he logs on in a month from now, 6 months from now, whenever you are able to roll it out?
I use it every day. It's an amazing capability. We are delivering a Win 10 desktop from the Azure cloud. As I said, it's a Department of Navy STIGGed image, so it's got all of the right modifications for our security envelope. It's equipped with the endpoint protection that we have approval for. It's able to be with full visibility and able to be defended and administered through NCDoc, full visibility through NetWarcom and all of those teams who provide that support. So it's fully integrated. It is tied in with our cloud storage. So my Azure cloud storage that I have, on my desktop, fully accessible there. So all your documents are there. You have the full suite of Office 365 capability. It is enabled, as I said, for cackless authentication. In fact, I'm at home, and so I'm doing this Zoom over my personal, MacBook Air, right? But 15 minutes before this call, I was on my Azure virtual desktop on the same machine that I authenticated through multi-factor authentication, cackless, and was interacting with my Win 10 desktop in real time. Now, when I put that desktop away, there's no data from the Department of Navy that's resident now on this device, right? Because that was it's a virtual desktop. It's completely segmented, and when that session went away, it's all gone. And so the opportunity here is huge in terms of our ability to deploy. I think in the near term, you can deploy a Win 10 desktop basically to anyone who has even a barely viable endpoint. And I'll give you an example. My desktop at the Pentagon is a horrible, and I'll be first to admit, it's a horrible NMCI desktop. It's barely able to keep itself above water on any given day. But since I started using this Azure virtual desktop, I actually just fire up the virtual desktop and run it from the Pentagon on my NMCI machine. And I have a way better experience than I get with the native desktop that's literally sitting under my desk. And that's just because of the power of what you have in the cloud and being able to deliver that in a fully integrated way. The next steps that are happening, there are several things that need to happen. While you don't need a CAC to access it, you do need your certificate to be able to access encrypted things, to be able to log into a website that wants CAC-based authentication. So there's a solution for that. It's happening. We're working it with DISA, and we are very close to being able to deploy that, so that even though you're logged in with MFA CAC-less authentication, I can still present my certificate and access an encrypted email. The other thing that's happening, and PEO Digital is right now enabling this, is to be able to securely access back into the DoD for applications that you need to get to. So, for example, if there's an on-prem system or application, I will be able to access that from my Azure virtual desktop as though I was, physically sitting on the DoD. So these are some of the kind of the last mile, last link things that are being worked. But this has huge promise. So, as I said, you can deploy this to an existing government desktop. You could dramatically extend the life of that desktop. You can deploy it to, under kind of the bring your own approved device mentality. I have used it on the road from my iPad And it works brilliantly, especially with an iPad with a keyboard. Right now, you've got a full Win 10 desktop that you're running basically from an iPad over an LTE or a 5G connection on the road. You got access to everything you want, wherever you are. It's even able to interact with the local devices. So I can get on a Teams call using a FlankSpeed Teams account, and it will use the local video camera, right, and microphone. So if someone didn't tell you, you wouldn't have any idea that you were interacting with a cloud delivered capability, which is kind of mind blowing.
That is amazing success, given that you feel like there are sometimes you feel like you're stuck 15 years ago in terms of from a technology perspective. I talked to a ton of CIOs. I'm not sure anyone else has this big of a VDI rollout. I think there are definitely VDI, but I think it sounds to me like you have access to everything from almost any device.
We will. And so, if I know that if PEO Digital, if Barry was here right now, he'd be cringing and saying, "Oh, sir, you gotta slow down." But it's going to happen. Right now, our first focus is actually to go replace the existing on-prem VDIs that we have. Right, let's just go replace it right now. This is such a dramatically better solution. What we have to do is come up with how could we roll this out more broadly? What's its place? How are we going to pay for it? Right? What's the financial model? All that stuff, and we'll work through it.
So it sounds to me like I don't want to spend too much more time on this because there's a ton more to talk about, but it sounds to me like you're the guinea pig, so to speak. You're drinking your own Kool-Aid right now.
Yeah, there's several hundred of us who've been doing this, and yeah, I'm absolutely drinking my own Kool-Aid.
Drinking your own champagne, whatever we're supposed to use these days, right?
Yeah.
Let me go back to the cloud memo for a second as well, because I think one of the things you mentioned was you had so many different ad hoc approaches to buying cloud and using cloud. Has that kind of come together? Have you seen over the last year or so an enterprise-wide approach to buying cloud, using cloud, managing cloud? I've talked to Paul Puckett over at the Army. He mentioned Sea Army. Obviously, we talked to the Air Force folks, and they talk about Platform One and Cloud One. Is there a Navy piece to this, or that you're using their clouds? Or give me a sense of how are you addressing these challenges that kind of sprung up?
Yeah, we absolutely do have, and we have revamped our approach to how we manage it internally. And so there are, Navy Cloud Office type of activities where we are doing, and we are also using, we're opportunists, so we will use other people's vehicle. I was historically, and I know this is maybe a dirty word, but I was historically a big fan of the Jedi concept. And I know there's the successor JWCC. So I am a big fan of that concept because it causes us to not have to spend time on the acquisition machinery. You create a vehicle, you can sort of do it in an IDIQ approach. And if I need cloud as a program, I can just go, pick it off the tree, so to speak, versus have to go through all of the steps associated with that and create yet another vehicle. Unfortunately, Jedi met its demise for a lot of other reasons, which whatever. JWCC promises to fulfill that vision. I think the challenge there is, I worry that at some point, and again, I know that this will sound contentious, it's not meant to be, but I worry at some point that JWCC will almost be OBE by the time that it comes to fruition, because you do have the Air Force, Army, and Department of Navy very focused in this area. We got to solve this problem, and we are working to consolidate our engagements, working to consolidate our cloud environments. We have this discussion with multiple cloud providers to say, show us your visibility. I know we bought it ad hoc, but you, Mr. or Ms. Cloud vendor, we need your help to bring it together. I know we didn't do it right to begin with. We want to bring it together. We want to create that visibility. We need to create visibility, not just from a management perspective, but also from a cyber perspective. You have people like Fleet Cyber who need to be able to defend that environment because it is an extension of our own infrastructure. And so when we bought it in these fragmented ways, we didn't allow ourselves to be able to defend it. Or even worse, we bought it through a reseller who was through an integrator, and like, we don't even know who the relationship is with. And someone will say, oh, it's in AWS. Okay, where? Through what vehicle? Through what integrator, right? And so we're working hard to consolidate all of that as well for defendability.
And that's what I've heard about JWCC. And even before that, Jedi had its own set of problems, but JWCC seems to be, we're going to own our cloud and then have the integrators, the third-party resellers, our partners in industry build on top of that cloud. So in a sense, you're not trying to buy the whole full stack architecture. You're just trying to buy, well, we need this widget, build the widget. Okay, you want to build it on AWS? Okay, it's over here. Oh, Microsoft's over there. Google, Oracle, or wherever. Is that also the approach Navy is going to start to take as soon as obviously JWCC and other vehicles come into place?
Yes, I mean, we want sort of cloud to be kind of cloud as infrastructure, almost cloud as GFE, right? It becomes, this is the platform that we build on. It's not about cloud per se, it's about what you can do with it, right? Whether it's data massing, data accessibility, building, that's where we start to get into that innovate LOE. What do you do with it to drive outcomes? So I know we have to focus on the vehicles, the acquisition side, and kind of getting our house in order. But for me, that impatient part of me wants to get past that to how are we leveraging this to create competitive advantage. That's where the magic is.
Just briefly, and then I want to get into some of these other kind of topical areas that kind of, as you said, innovate on top of it. Roughly speaking, where are you at with cloud? You have so many workloads there. How do you measure the progress you're making?
Yeah, I think we don't necessarily look at it at a workload basis, but we'll look at it at a program basis. And so, we'll think about, which capabilities and which programs are leveraging cloud as a delivery mechanism. The reality is most of them are at this point, especially in the enterprise space. We have some huge successes. We moved Navy ERP to the AWS cloud. And I believe it's the largest SAP instance in the world. And so that was moved up along with, and we continue to shift workloads to cloud. And we're doing that from an on-prem perspective to cloud, as well as any new capability. And as part of that cloud memo, the intent is it's cloud first, right? We are not looking to expand our on-prem infrastructure. I think there are a number of other activities that are happening also in conjunction with the Office 365 and Azure rollout, where we're now shifting on-prem storage to cloud at the file server level. Also, on-prem SharePoints are all being shifted to SharePoint Online. And so we're seeing that kind of across the board. The Marine Corps is, as is often the case, they're far ahead and running down the path. The Navy is a fast follower, and they are on the SharePoint side, at least, following the template that has kind of been laid down by the Marine Corps. But I think it's this cloud first mentality that you see with the memo, and then this ongoing shift of infrastructure to cloud. And then what we really want to do is to be able to sweep up behind that as we move on-prem to cloud. We want to know that we are actively decommissioning that on-prem infrastructure. There's pennies to be found in those couch cushions. Excuse me. There's I think we're really good historically at standing up new capability, but we're not very good at retiring the old stuff. And so we have a strong focus on that. And we've called it cattle drive, but it is this: we need to actively go out and identify it, market for elimination, and then reap the savings, so that we can invest that, not to cut costs. It's not about cutting costs. It's about saying we can reap that savings and reinvest it in modernization, in cloud capable infrastructure, in DevSecOps, et cetera.
There's a lot more to talk about. I could bring up MilCloud 2.0 and the decision by DISA to let that expire. There's a lot about commercial cloud versus on-premises. But let me maybe jump forward a little bit and talk about another memo you issued back in October. And this was really the enterprise services one. We talked a little bit about that, but really this all plays into this bigger idea of digital transformation initiative. Maybe put some of these other pieces together. It's not just, hey, we're going to move to the cloud, but it's the end result, as you mentioned, the capabilities you want to provide. What are some of these other pieces that cloud will help, or that will kind of further this digital transformation?
Yeah, the enterprise services memo, I think, was critical. It builds on the cloud memo. These things do build on each other. And the basic premise of the enterprise services memo is we need to stop duplicating and reinventing the wheel. It should be a build once, use many mentality. And I think cloud gives us an even better footing. The cloud capability gives us an even better ability to deliver these enterprise services. And at the end of the day, there should be a portfolio of enterprise services that the commands, the system commands, and the rest of the Navy and Marine Corps can make use of. And that will keep them from having to continually recreate those capabilities. That's a waste of money, right? It's a waste of people's time. But importantly, it also ends up creating silos. And so when we look at the problems that we're trying to solve for in the past, it is the creation of those silos which have inhibited our ability to strategically leverage data, right? This data lives in these islands and silos that have never really been brought together. And so enterprise services is attempting to get at the issue of recreating capability, but also solving for we want to stop creating these silos. And so the enterprise service portfolio is a key part of the vision that the CTO office and the acquisition community have in terms of how we want to leverage this capability. And so what we're seeing now are sort of first steps of enterprise capability in this way. Now, I think back, and I know we're harping on it, but the Office 365 capability is a primo example of a cloud delivered enterprise service that will cause us to turn off tons of on-prem capability that was developed over time, literally thousands of Exchange servers that exist that have to all be independently maintained and integrated. And it's a complex environment that we can dispense with, and people can just buy Office 365 at the capability level as an enterprise service. Another one is identity management. So we have stood up a cloud-based, cloud-delivered ICAM solution, a stack of software to do identity credential authentication. And its first sort of customer in terms of a platform was that Navy ERP enterprise system. But the intent now is we are going to take that ICAM solution and begin to fold other systems onto that identity management and credential access management system. And so that becomes kind of a cornerstone enterprise service that will be delivered. And it's absolutely a part of that, that enterprise services memo. And much more to come.
I'm going to have to ask what's more to come, because not that you haven't done enough lately, but you've hit upon two big things, right? You've hit upon the Office 365 collaboration tools, email, Word processing, Excel spreadsheets, and the like. You talked about identity management, which is a key piece of zero trust. Are there other enterprise services that you plan for in 2022 and beyond that you can talk about?
I think the big one that everyone is both eager and nervous to talk about is DevSecOps, right? DevSecOps is a critical capability. And so DevSecOps cloud delivered as an enterprise service, as an enterprise capability, can be a game changer. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you there's not a single DevSecOps enterprise service. It cannot be, right? And people get nervous. Does this mean you're going to consolidate DevSecOps environments into the single massive DevSecOps environment? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I kind of view DevSecOps environments, cloud delivered DevSecOps environments, kind of like the way the Navy would view shipyards. We have a whole bunch of shipyards, right? They all serve different purposes. We don't have a whole bunch of them just because we want to have a bunch of them. They all do different things. So some work in aluminum, some work in steel, some work as build surface combatants, some are undersea, some are nuclear oriented shipyards, some conventional. But this portfolio of shipyards, we leverage, the acquisition community leverages to create the outcome, which is a fleet. I kind of view DevSecOps as a similar analogy. If you think about it like a shipyard, we're going to build multiple capabilities in those DevSecOps environments, multiple applications and platforms. But there's different needs. We need to have DevSecOps environments for the tactical world, where we can deliver tactical applications for weapons systems, weapons platforms, through different channels. We need to have DevSecOps environments that can service in the classified realm versus the unclassified. At the same time, there are DevSecOps environments that have to be focused on enterprise systems and capabilities on the other side of the network, if you will. And so we need to have a portfolio of DevSecOps platforms. They absolutely have to leverage the cloud. They will link into other enterprise services like identity management, for example. And at the end of the day, they will deploy capability into other cloud delivery platforms, right? You can deploy a containerized application into an AWS cloud infrastructure, and then know that in that DevSecOps environment, you can update it. So we are working now, and it is absolutely on the roadmap. We have it on the FY22 campaign plan to have a DevSecOps memo, much like that enterprise services memo, which will help provide the guidance, the guide rails for how we want to view that DevSecOps capability. And again, I'll go back to that shipyard analogy. What's the right number? I don't know. People ask me, how many DevSecOps environments should we have? Is it 1? No. Is it 20? Probably not. But I don't know what the exact number is, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna do the right thing. Along the way, we're gonna be opportunistic. You probably heard that we have this environment called Black Pearl, which is in the family tree of Platform One, and we have worked to use the Platform One environment. We've kind of taken that environment, put a Navy angle to it. Obviously, a cool naval name like Black Pearl instead of Platform One. But we are also leveraging shared services between Platform One and Black Pearl, like the Iron Bank, right, for repository. And so we're going to be opportunistic, as my colleague Lauren Knausenberger, Air Force CIO, would say. We're going to ride the Air Force's wake on that when we can. In other areas, we've got to do work on our own to service, and we have some really amazing world-class DevSecOps capabilities associated with Project Overmatch and some of the things like that. So it's a work in progress, and we're going to be coming out with more of those guide rails to help shape that DevSecOps world.
What I think is the most important piece here is you're not saying, here's my analogy of the day, one ring to rule them all, or when DevSecOps rule them all. But hey, if you're going to build a DevSecOps environment, here's things to think about that you must do. One, it's got to be on a cloud. It's got to be enterprise, available for others to use, so it's not a silo. It's got to meet these specific requirements for security, or however you set it up. And that's really going to be the key to get, okay, once you have those, and you mentioned guardrails in place, then you can get to that innovation side of the alignments of effort and get, hey, this command, these folks need a widget that does very specific for this command. So now go build it, versus, oh, now they're going to have to buy cloud. Now they're going to have to figure out the DevSecOps approach. Now they have to worry about security. All that's done, just build the widget so you can get the capabilities quicker.
And even better, if you do it right and you have that kind of set of shipyards and DevSecOps environments, and they are accredited and they trust each other, I could even go a step farther and say, hey, I want that container of code from that DevSecOps environment. I have reciprocity. I respect the ATO process that went into that. I can bring that over into this also accredited and trusted DevSecOps environment. And we don't even have to recreate that piece of code, right? We can build on that. And so I think there's this, there's this flywheel this flywheel effect that you can gain as these things build on each other, right? Cloud as infrastructure, cloud with enterprise services, portfolio of enterprise services riding on it. And then DevSecOps environments, hooked together in a way that we can provide trusted reciprocity, improved accreditation, and help drive a completely transformed approach for how we drive cybersecurity then.
And then there's the time piece too, because all of a sudden capabilities don't take a year or 5 years. They take 5 weeks or 6 weeks to go from concept to minimum viable product. And then you can iterate from there. I think that's the other piece of this.
Absolutely. And it was 2 years ago at IT West, like literally on the cusp of the pandemic. I gave a keynote there and I talked about kind of how it works today, right? And I was saying that from 2 years ago, to go from need identified to a requirements process that acquisition would run, which would result in a huge requirement, then to an RFP, which is going to take a couple years, and a protest, and then we'll actually get a partner engaged to go build it, and then they're going to go through this horrific ATO process, and it's going to, RMF, and it's going to take a year and a half to get an ATO. And when you stitched all that together, it was like 6 to 7 years, literally, from need identified to capability fielded. I mean, that's a geological time frame when it comes to the world of technology. And that's what I think, stacking all these capabilities on top of kind of what we've been talking about, it gets us to this point where, to your point, you're able to respond in weeks and do it with cybersecurity built in, right? Do it leveraging enterprise services. It's potentially a game changer. Of course, I want that now, right? I want it yesterday. There's a lot of wood to chop between here and there to get there, but I think we're making progress. We are on the path.
And as you mentioned, you are using some of the other services, technologies, and capabilities already, like Black Pearls, borrowing from Platform One. So there are new requirements that come in, whether from Congress or from commanders or whomever, the secretary, that you can say, okay, that's a new build, go do it right there on that Platform One or Sea Army or wherever, and not have to wait. Well, we can't do it until our own is built, and then we have to. So we'll go through this old process, which actually leads me down to a different path. I just want to make sure we hit upon before we run out of time. There's a big push to really think about platforms as technology agnostic, right? You're bringing disparate systems, data, people together. How are you kind of keeping that in mind, the agnostic importance of having technology being agnostic to the user and to the overall end result?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, web-enabled and delivered applications are the leveler at the user level, right? That avoids us, getting into the specifics. But the reality is, you're always going to live in certain sort of software stacks and environments for how you develop applications, and that does get to the point where, kind of back when we talked about different DevSecOps environments akin to that shipyard. Some work in aluminum, some work in steel, some are going to work in, this type of stack, this software stack, and others are going to work in this other software stack. And we're going to have to be mindful of that. We're never going to drive applications to the point where kind of there's only one stack of use. That's completely unrealistic, especially in an environment the size of the Department of Navy. And so we're going to have to drive that, but we have to accept that the world that we live in is heterogeneous, and it will always be heterogeneous. It is the legacy that we have to try to capture. And it is what we're going to have to accept going forward. The needs of the development of a weapon system are going to be fundamentally different than the needs of development of an enterprise system. That was a really great non-answer. I'm sorry about that.
No, I think it also gets back to, and maybe this is something else that's on your agenda, the containerization, the Kubernetes, the idea that, well, I'm going to put it on this cloud with this technology stack today, but in a year, in 5 years, it's going to remind me something's going to change, and makes more sense to move it, and I can move it from A to B, and that's where that containerization comes in. I imagine you are starting to at least look into it, or have some plans around how to put that in, how to make that easier, that movement easier.
My first response when you were talking about that was, boy, that is a rich problem to have. I can't wait to have that problem, right? But the reality is, that portability of containers, it is important. And I think those will be some of the things that we'll start to unpack as we get into the DevSecOps guide rails, right? That we do need to lay down. What are we going to accept? What is appropriate? And how do we want to kind of ensure our maneuver space in the future so that we don't paint ourselves into 82 different corners on this?
Aaron, we're just about out of time, but I got to get one more in here before I let you, because we only talked a little bit about data, and we know there's a big JADC2 effort ongoing across the DoD. Can you just talk a little bit about how the Navy's participating in JADC2, and how do these cloud digital transformation efforts kind of fit into not just JADC2, but making data more valuable, quicker decision making, and the like?
Yeah, the main channel for our participation, we have several channels, but kind of the key channel for our participation in JADC2 is Project Overmatch. And what Admiral Small is doing out at NavWar in San Diego with Overmatch is awesome. I'm a techie at heart, and I love to hear his updates. He's taken absolutely the right technology mindset to this. And what he's talking about with Overmatch, at the end of the day, it gets to the core of what I've talked about as a CIO, which is, I call it the golden requirement, right? The golden requirement, you cut through all the vision and stuff, and, there's a golden requirement as a CIO, and it is to be able to securely move any information from anywhere to anywhere. And what Admiral Small is doing with Overmatch is that on the tactical end of the network. And that is a critical element of what will feed into and what is feeding into JADC2. So I'm absolutely drank the Kool-Aid on what they're doing with Overmatch. I tell Admiral Small, I'm like, I'm your biggest advocate. Help me help you. And what he's doing with that program is the moral equivalent of what we've been doing with the modernization effort, right? Cloud is a part of what he's doing there. DevSecOps is a key part of what he's doing. The ability to dynamically update systems and applications and capabilities through wide area links to platforms afloat, and at the same time enable this kind of any-to-any communication of different platforms afloat, undersea, aviation, so that we can pass this information securely. Overmatch is awesome. And it is, at the end of the day, about being able to share and interface data. That's what Overmatch is. And at the end of the day, that's what JADC2 is. People talk about it's, integrated long range fires. Yeah, but to do that, you have to be able to pass information in a knowable state, and it has to be ingestible and usable by the recipient. And so, getting into it from a data perspective, we have our CDO engaged with JADC2 as well from a data interchange. But I think I'm a huge fan of what's going on there with Overmatch. And that, in my opinion, will become a core capability of JADC2.
Sounds to me like we're going to have to get in touch with Admiral Small. We'll use your name as the big recommendation, because it sounds like there's a lot of good to talk about. Aaron, unfortunately, we're out of time for today. I think I could have probably talked to you for another 45 minutes, But we'll have you back on next time and have you back on soon because there's a lot of good stuff going on. So let me thank my guest. Aaron Weis is the Department of Navy's Chief Information Officer. Aaron, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Now let me send you back to Tom in the studio for more from the DoD Cloud Exchange.